the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one, only one. I was an ordinary boy until I broke the rules. My life destroyed, life destroyed. Until I walk awake, scream my mind, I shout, the ground shakes. How much can I take? My mind will break. Will it break? Can I take? Can I be your superhero?
All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name is 12 Gauge. I will be your host, and this is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. I hope everybody's doing well. This is the second part of last night's live reboot, members only, past live, dark triad. So this one is just going to have myself being live with the other panel guests in the background. So I will be probably over the person behind me, which was the other 12 gauge. I'll try not to make it confusing. Hello, Aquarius. Hello, Rondi. Hope you are doing well on this Wednesday. I'm going to show you guys some things that I found today. And they're from a blast from the past. So I hope that you enjoy them. And then I will get started with the Dark Triad. Give people time to get in here. So let me start with let's start with this one. Because what we do in this channel is we bring receipts. We don't just sit there and talk the whole time. We don't sit there and draw figures. We actually show what we're about. So if you can see this, I'm going to read it to you. It says, my sister's best friend from college is married to an FBI agent. He was one of the first FBI agents allowed at the scene in Moscow. Apparently, the murder's knife sheath was found under the body of Ethan. They were able to find DNA on the sheath and sent it to 23andMe. A cousin of the killer has done 23andMe, so they were able to somehow link to the killer. That and a cat happened to be taking a pee and set off a nearby Ring camera. which is where they were able to see the Hyundai Elantra, which of course the killer drove. They tracked him to PA where he was home on winter break with the family. An agent posed as garbage men and went through the family's garage to find DNA and confirm the DNA match. From the text message my sister received from the FBI agent, apparently it is one of the most gruesome crime scenes he's ever been a part of. Ethan's legs were sliced all the way down to the hamstrings. One of the girls was stabbed 54 times, and was beaten so badly, every bone in her face was broken and so sunken in that she was unrecognizable. I don't know if this is factual or not, but I do remember this from the very beginning. And I've also spoke on this many, many times, but I just could never find it. As you can see that it says Indy Hall and it's a group text message to the people. So you can see all the people in this group chat. This group message. So the reason that I wanted to show this is because I remember somebody calling me out kind of on the cool about the cat part. And they said that there's no reference to that anywhere. And here it is right here. It says that that and the cat happened to be taking a pee and set off a nearby Ring camera, which is where they were able to see the Hyundai Elantra, which of course the killer drove. Now I've also been looking for the same thing where it showed about Ethan's legs. So here is where it shows, and one of the girls was stabbed 54 times, beaten so badly every bone in her face was broken. I don't know if this person actually got this information from somewhere else and texted it, but I thought that was interesting nonetheless because I've been looking for that forever. And I finally found it. You know what's weird to me is people will they'll believe certain things, but they won't believe this, which just was out way before any of the information that certain creators are putting out right now. And actually, the DNA stuff and all that other stuff that's being presented on another channel, Neats Neeks Peaks did a lot of that. So did Crime Circus. It's just a rehashed version, and people are eating it up, and I think it's hilarious. I posted this on the community tab today, and if you couldn't figure it out, here's a footprint right here. And people will say, well, that's her footprint. Okay. Could be, but here's a piece of paper. So I'm not quite certain what she's photographing, but she's photographing something. And I thought it was interesting because I've never seen this picture since I screenshotted it. It went from there. And here's another picture for you. It says on November 13th, the surviving roommates summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out. It was not waking up. At 11:58 p.m. a.m., a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked to the 911 dispatcher before Moscow police arrived at the location. We know that, of course. Here's another theory about early on about the roommates. It says two people who claimed to be at the house with the roommates when the bodies were discovered quickly came to the surviving roommate's defense and wrote that the roommates woke up, went upstairs to the kitchen, and noticed the sliding glass door was open. And it was during that time they discovered Ethan. They didn't say where he was found on the floor, but that it was so horrific that both girls went into shock and ran out of the house. One of the roommates fainted, and the other was beyond hysterical and not making any sense. Their frantic actions while coming out of the house caught the attention of people walking past. The people responding on the victim's IG claimed to be two of those people. So I guess that's Instagram. They implied that the roommate who fainted had already dialed 911, but was so distraught that she fainted before she could give any info that the dispatcher could understand. The only info that the bystander who picked up the roommate's phone could give 911 dispatcher was that she just saw her friend run out of the house and faint. That's how the 911 call was made on the roommate's phone and by someone else, and why the call went out for an unconscious person. What do y'all think about that? Do you think that's legit or it's not? It sounds more feasible than anything that I've heard in a long, long time. What do y'all think about that? Those two of you that are in chat. Back to the original rumor out of Moscow now with new context on a 911 call and the insight on use of drugs being rumored. Final edit. In reference to a roommate hallucinating, she did not actually hallucinate. She thought she hallucinated or her mind was playing tricks in her in the dark. So everyone commenting that you don't actually hallucinate real life people while tripping, I know. It's speculated she actually saw him, but at first thought he was not real. May have taken drugs earlier in the night and chalked up what she saw as not actual events, just being tired. This is Moscow, Idaho. Taking drugs or not, the first thought of an intruder in your home is not what would come to mind. All of this stance was on speculation, not actual hallucinations from taking drugs. Just the thought she might be hallucinating to make sense of seeing somebody at 3 a.m. Marking as info because it's speculation around town. Still a theory at best. Not confirmed. One of the very first rumors I was told in town was that the two surviving roommates heard something, went into one room, and locked the door until morning before calling friends over and then the police. This rumor started so much speculation and head scratching in the beginning, like if they heard something, why wouldn't they call 911? And this is another response to this. It says, I did hear a similar version of this in the first few days after the murders regarding what one of the surviving roommates saw. He was not at the top of the stairs, but outside her window. She thought she was seeing things, maybe hallucinating, for the lack of a better word, and went into the other roommate's room across the hall. The rummaging she heard later was what she thought was just her roommates having people over late. Small party, get together after being out. There was a neighbor outside on the scene as emergency personnel were arriving that heard this roommate saying these things. I saw several pics early on forensics, taking pics of this window and dusting for prints. Maybe the killer was looking for entry into the home at that point. That would make way more sense. Someone outside in the dark sounds like something you actually could convince yourself you didn't really see, especially if they were gone if you checked again or went and got your roommate to check. God, I feel so bad for these girls if that's what happened. So creepy. But the investigators did pay a lot of attention to that downstairs window the first day. This would make even more sense. Yes, they did. They dusted and photoed and did a lot down there on those lower windows, more than they did around Dylan's, you know? This was also there. It says their level of intoxication likely played a role. Drunk people at 3 a.m. will fall asleep with their face in a plate of food with the TV on. This was taken from Reddit. It says on August 21st, 2022, BK was issued a ticket for a seatbelt violation. A screenshot of the citation was posted in this thread but has since been removed by the mods. The fact that he received a seatbelt ticket in Moscow has been widely reported. It has been widely reported that BK lived at Steptoe Village, a WSU operated housing complex for postgrads and students with families. The ticket also indicates that BK lived at the Steptoe Village apartments. I won't post the address that was given on the ticket, but I verified that it was Steptoe Village via Google. The ticket indicates that it was issued at the intersection of Pullman and Farm Road. That happened to be the intersection that someone traveling from Pullman to the crime scene would have to turn at in order to get to the King Road house. A Carfax, which was posted along with the ticket, indicates that BK put over 10,000 miles on his car in 4 months, even if 2,500 of those miles were attributed to his drive from PA to Washington when he moved for school. He was still racking up close to 400 miles a week. Doing what? He wasn't an Uber food delivery driver that we know of, and he was in grad school and presumably studying for most of that time. BK's Pullman residence is 9.8 miles from the murder house. The theory: very soon, within weeks after arriving in Pullman, BK was obsessively going by casing the King Road house, which means he would have encountered his targets in that time frame. Additionally, cops don't usually go out of their way to give people seatbelt violations. In my experience, a seatbelt or similar violation is a result of a cop wanting to punish you for being suspect or doing something shady. Example: driving around a known drug area, etc., but lacking anything else to charge you with. The source: I received many such violations in my misspent youth. I wish I could have seen that citation. And this is what somebody else wrote. The seatbelt law in Idaho is a secondary law, not a primary law. That means that someone can't be pulled over only for not wearing their seatbelt. There has to be some other violation that causes the police to pull them over. And then they can hit them with a seatbelt violation as well. So, yeah, it's usually used when someone did something minor and the cop decided to give them a break and hit them with a lesser charge of a seatbelt violation. Though if a cop does want to pull someone over just for the seatbelt violation, they can probably find something to pull the person over for anyway. 1 mile over the speed limit, failing to come to a complete stop, not putting a blinker on with enough warning, etc. And this is just a map that I found of the supposed route where the individual's phone report to the network at 4:48 near Blaine, Idaho. Phone travels south to Genesee, west to Uniontown, and north back into Pullman. Phone has signal crossing areas where it did not report to the network after 2:47 a.m. While looking at this, though, as we've been told, and I'm sure people are going to say this in the comments because, people love to speak. Well, it was spoken in court that his car wasn't seen south on 95 on any camera by Payne. Okay. So, how did his phone end up over here turning on at 4:48? And here's the tower right here. But anyways, whatever. So supposedly he went around whatever route back to Pullman, and there's a cell phone tower, there's a cell phone tower, and there's a cell phone tower. So I'm saying this one right here would probably be the one closest to King Road. This one, or this one would be close enough to the Steptoe Apartments. And he probably knew this one was here. That's why he turned off the phone not long after he got in between both of those, if that was the direction in which he took to the house. But in my thinking, and I could be wrong, if he was going in his phone, report to the network right here, how could it be over here? And how did he get here? And what was he doing over here if he was heading toward Wildway Park? That's just a question I have because I've looked at this and I've asked myself that the whole time. Maybe I'm not seeing it. I'm sure I'll get told exactly how it happened and how wrong I am. But you know what? It's all good. Hope you're enjoying the content. And here's the Carfax for his Elantra. And it shows you the mileage at 101,515 on 4/20/2022, Pennsylvania. But he first serviced it on 1/26/2022 in Brawheadville, Pennsylvania. Tire repaired. It had 96,531 miles. The next time, 3 months later, it had 101,000, which could explain the long distance drive. But then 4 months later, it had 111,808 miles, where supposedly he was already in Pullman, because this is where he got it serviced. The vehicle was serviced, tire condition and pressure checked, another tire was replaced, oil and filter changed. So this is 2 months before the crime. And then it was serviced again when he went back home. There's no mileage there. Or this was in Pullman, my bad. This is when he got his tags. So registration updated when owner moved a vehicle to a new location. Vehicle color noted as white. And then December 1st, 2022, Hyundai Motor America, they issued a recall, it looks like, for underbody corrosion preventative for this campaign, whatever that is. So that tells you, there it says 2015 Hyundai Elantra, and it had his title number or his VIN number, I guess that's what that was right here. So if this is his vehicle, the mileage really did rack up a lot, especially between these 2 months. which I could understand the drive from Pennsylvania to Pullman. But that's a lot of miles right there. I would like to know what his mileage was when him and his dad went home. That way you could compare it with this. And this is something else that I found. Hey, Cash. This says, it's kind of people commentating on why they didn't call 911. It says, then why call your friend's boyfriend to come check the house out before you come out of your room? That poor young man saw his good friends in that scene. Therapy for life on that one. The other one says, yes, I hope it will come out what Dee heard. Dee supposedly called all the girls in the house after the crying and screaming stopped and no one answered. And she still didn't call the police. She needed to explain herself and her actions that night. Next one says 911 caller was the friend who went in because Dee called him to come over because she was scared from what she had heard in the night. He went to X and E's room first and then called 911. Why D or B didn't call the police once is in question. I'm sure we all have those questions. And this is from an officer. It said the King Road residence contained a significant amount of blood from the victims, including spatter and cast off, blood stain patterning resulting from blood drops released from an object due to its motion, which, based on my training, makes it likely that this evidence was transferred to Koberger's person, clothing, or shoes. This is from a sworn statement from one of the police at the scene. This says on the morning of November 13th, the surviving roommate summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 a.m., a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence on the surviving roommate's cell phone. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before a Moscow police officer arrived at the location. Officers entered the residence and found the four victims on the second and third floors. Also got this from an article. It says it was talking about Cassie Babbitt. And it says she said DNA samples had been taken from the scene and are being processed. When pressed, she said it was possible that some of the DNA being tested may not be of the four victims. There were nail clippings that were taken off the four victims, obviously, and other ones that are being sent off. And so that will be processed, she said. Because as you remember, they bagged their hands not long after, because usually in a struggle or a fight, the individual usually tries to get your DNA under their fingernails. And if any of that DNA was under their fingernails, they clipped the fingernails and bagged their hands. So I'm kind of curious if any of that DNA under their fingernails match the perpetrator. She added that the autopsies were completed by Spokane Medical Examiner's Office, located in Spokane, Washington, about 90 minutes northwest of Moscow, but she responded to the scene a few hours after police were called. It's pretty traumatic when there's four dead college students who've been stabbed to death in one location, she said, adding that there was quite a bit of blood at the scene. I've been a coroner for 16 years. We have had multiple victim murders in the past, but nothing like this, she said. Okay, and that concludes that. So I hope you enjoyed that a little bit. Let me get to the video, okay? Do y'all have any questions on anything that I presented there? Don't feel old. It's just a mindset. And once again, the X11, that is me live, and there's the past me, there's ginger people. Excuse me. There's ginger people, there's Amicus Curiae, there's my friend Kay. So let's go ahead and continue this because it is a long video, and I told people that I would continue it today. So here we go.
Like,
well, actually, I served during 9/11. Actually, 9/11 happened
Yes.
during under my belt. So
that's what I'm saying, is that you served during the time that people
Yeah.
were very much like pro-military and pro during the time of trying to rebuild this country. Since you've been in service, I imagine we have people who did the Las Vegas shooting and what was the other thing I was about to say? Like it's been so much more detrimental towards the U.S. I feel like when it comes to the military than when you were in. So yes, we definitely went through a different time, and
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Well, I like the diversity that we have up here. Ginger and I have, I'm assuming that Ginger had never served. I've never served, so I love the diversity that we have up here. And I like the fact that we can all get along and, put our opinions and thoughts out there, and we can still, have a healthy debate, as you were saying, Amicus.
Absolutely.
Let's go on with the video a little more. I might have to do a part 3 on that. And if you guys are open to come on to the panel on the part 3, you're very welcome. I enjoy your level of thought process. Here we go.
Evidence of any of that stuff, but if you try to tell them otherwise, it doesn't matter if you were trained to kill or that you were an FBI investigator. They know more than you do, and it's
of course
the downside to this. I mean, the real downside to this is that media has taken multiple times where they've taken what internet sleuths have said and reported it as breaking news, and it turned out that it was nothing.
That is the new world landscape of media, which is somebody makes something up.
Okay,
a young girl, a friend of a friend. I didn't know this person, but they were.
Hold on a second.
We have a super chat. We have from I've Got Words. They have a question.
And what was the question?
What is your opinion on the surviving roommate who didn't call police until much later?
So I personally know 3 people who have had not circumstance where somebody was killing, but in one instance, a friend of mine, when she was younger, thought she heard something outside of her window, and she curled up into the covers, and then she just sat there frozen. She didn't realize, but 5 hours had passed before she came out of that position. Another girl, I know that somebody broke into their house, and when they were standing in the living room, she actually, for some strange reason, ran towards them and into a corner and balled up in a corner. She doesn't know why. She did it, and she just stayed there. It freaked the robber out so bad that he left. So, but in another case, a young girl, a friend of a friend, I didn't know this person, but they were in their sorority they were always talking about how she used to sleep with the covers pulled up over her head. And they're like, how do you do that? And it turns out when she was young, her and her family had been out. She came home, and a guy came out of her closet, apparent home invasion, and he was hiding in her closet. And when she got in her bed, he came out of the closet and walked out of the house. And since that point, she slept with her head under the covers, and she didn't tell anybody until the next morning. So, and even somebody who got kidnapped by Ted Bundy that survived him, she got away from him and never told anybody, even after it was in the news and she recognized him, and she could have probably stopped other murders. But it's this is a traumatic experience. I mean, this is something. I don't blame that girl, and I think she might have been intoxicated, and she got frozen and went back in there, and she didn't know. According to the affidavit, she didn't see the people getting murdered, so she probably thought the same thing. I'll go in there and hide, and he'll go away. And she probably fell asleep or passed out.
Did she see the knife? Did he look like somebody was actually in the process of doing something?
You know what's crazy is that yes, I'm wearing gloves. That way you can You can tell that this is me live. Anyways, what's crazy is people have always been stuck on the 8 hours. They've been stuck on the 8 hours. And I don't believe that people will ever get this unless they've ever lived that type of life. Like, they won't understand it. They won't understand it because if you've never partied, and I'm talking partied, like partied at a residence, and that was the party house, you won't understand why they chose to wait 8 hours. To people, in order for that to make sense, there had to be something else going on. There had to be something that caused them from calling 911. Could they have been irresponsible? I'm sure we'll know. Could they have slept through it all? I'm sure we'll know. Were they intentionally irresponsible? I very doubt that. I very doubt that because how many of you are wide awake after you've been awoken from a deep sleep? So, as she was stating in the PCA, she was awoken around 4 o'clock, which was sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. So, if you're half asleep, you open the door, you're looking out, your eyes are trying to focus because it's dark. You don't see anything, so you go back to bed. But people want to say that she was part of it. She planned it, she was the lookout, she was this, she was that. The second time, she heard to the effect of somebody's here. She looks back out, doesn't hear anything, doesn't see anything other than that. Still probably in and out of consciousness, trying to wake up, trying to go to sleep, trying to figure it all out. The third time, whether she was awake, whether she was asleep, whether she got back to sleep, have you ever dozed off and been like, holy shit, what was that? And you couldn't really differentiate whether that was real or whether that was just you hearing something in your sleep? Because I do that a lot. I hear thuds, I hear all kinds of stuff. And I wake up and I go and look and there's nothing there. It makes you feel crazy. And I'm not defending Dylan, but you know what? To be logical, all this could have happened. But people wanted to make that. So that makes a lot of sense when she finally went to sleep, once the murders were over, that she passed out and didn't wake back up. Because once you go back into a deep sleep, you're sleeping for hours. Hell, I got home today at 5 o'clock. I just woke up a while ago at 7:45, 48. So that's 2 hours and something. And I felt like I had slept all night. I woke up in a panic, thought that I was late for work. So you just never know. You just never know exactly what was going on at that point. But to say that something nefarious or something was intentional, that's pretty hardcore, wouldn't you believe?
Something I just read that she saw somebody in black with a bushy eyebrow, and that was it. And locked her door and went back in. I mean, people have this weird "I don't want to make waves" kind of instinct. Like, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to bother the cops. I don't want to accuse somebody of something. You know, it's a weird instinct we have, and then you add this sort of bystander effect onto that, and then we just don't do much.
We even saw this to a different extent in the Vegas shooting. I think is an excellent example of this. You know, a guy starts shooting people with a gun, and a gun compared to a firecracker is totally different. But what did people assume? They assumed that it was fireworks, and so it's similar in the way that people are not programmed to think, oh, that person is in my house right now with a mask on. So when they see it, they are so traumatized that they freeze with fear. And that's why I wrote that book.
Yeah, I love your book, Sheep No More. I don't know how you though train or coach people up not to freeze. I mean, freeze is it's an old primitive survival instinct when there's nothing else left. And unfortunately, it doesn't work very well. It's not, it's sort of preparing for strike rather than preparing for fight.
Right. This is exactly because we're not prepared for it. So it doesn't take much. You can prepare yourself by forward thinking these things. Doesn't mean you're going to be paranoid or constantly looking behind your back, but thinking to yourself, how would I react in this situation? And I think if people just did that, I teach courses where I put people through an hour or 2 hours of all these different scenarios that I know they're going to fail. We do that for about 30 minutes where, for instance, you're in a coffee shop and a person with that's emotionally disturbed comes up and starts making a ruckus. What do you do? And so people will confront him or they'll do something. And so I will teach them to think their way through it and then put them back through similar circumstances. And then they're thinking their way through the process. And I think this is something that really needs to be taught to people on a wide scale.
Well, it's interesting.
I think
I've talked a little bit over the years, and me and my family were in a shooting at Luger Steakhouse in Brooklyn, and I was sort of shocked that I held it together as well as I did. But let's do this. Let's take a little break. Well, because it really is where this stuff. I think it's talking to guys like Johnson that I was.
Well,
able to
I was thinking like if this guy had a gun, he would have taken out a classroom.
Oh yeah.
So let me get y'all's thoughts on that. What he said. The fight or flight response. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. If you're familiar with that, you understand that whenever we're faced with adversity, most human beings, they go into that fight or flight response. And that's when the adrenaline's flowing. That's when the cortisol's flowing. That's when everything is preparing you to either fight or run. And that comes from the very primitive years of our existence when we were back fighting saber-toothed tigers. The unfortunate is, even to this day, 2024, we don't know the difference between an individual with a knife and a saber-toothed tiger. Even though intellectually we do, our fight or flight response has been programmed from the very primitive portions of our lives, and we still react the same. So any reenactment or anything that you deal with that causes you stress, that releases adrenaline or cortisol, your body automatically goes into fight or flight. So do you believe that Dylan could have potentially been in fight or flight? Let me start with Ginger.
Yes, if she had been there, if Dylan had actually truly been at the house, like she stated she was, then yes, I believe, because I myself have, been through trauma and have suffered, through, a major situation. And the whole flight or fight situation is, it's definitely a real thing. In this particular instance, in scenario, I guess to answer your question, yes, she very well could have, just not have been completely, she could have just been like scared out of her mind, and just went into her room, closed the door, locked the door, and laid down and fell asleep. I mean, okay. I don't know how realistic that is, considering the home, the way that the home was built. And I have questions about this because, in my opinion, and again, it's just speculation and it's just an opinion, because I don't know Dylan personally. I've never talked to her. I'm just going by what this piece of paper this PCA states.
Right.
And you know, a lot of it isn't even factual. So, and another thing too, when Ellie, you know, when law enforcement says that she saw somebody with bushy eyebrows, I'm like, that is so crazy to me. And so, like, you know, who says that? That she didn't even say, oh, I saw, you know, a man, you know, like, you know, of color, or, you know, who is Caucasian, or how did she see his eyebrows? I don't know. I mean, but yes, to answer your question, yes, of course. You know, she very, very, very well could have just, like I said, completely, she's young, you know, that her age too, you know, I'm sure she hasn't been through major traumatic instances in her own life to experience this. Maybe this is the first time.
Okay.
So yeah, she could have been.
The panel guests. Amicus, you're next. Do you believe that she went into fight or flight during that frozen shock phase, or do you believe that possibly she could have been more coherent than was stated?
So it's kind of difficult because I do have my degree in psychology, and I do understand like how much trauma can vary, right? So there's a part of me that thinks that experiencing something that is essentially as random as it was, and you know, having this quadruple murder happen in your house that seemingly, you know, nothing happens in. Yes, that is obviously like petrifying. But something that I hit on in my video is that I don't really understand how. Okay, let me rewind a little bit. Sorry. So the next morning, you know, when she supposedly knows, because this 911 call was made and it wasn't from Bill Morrison and all this stuff, or even if it was, because I know that none of that is like truly verified. At some point, you know that something is going on in the house, especially because according to the PCA, you hear, you know, people getting up in the middle of the night. You hear crying coming from your roommates' bedrooms, which arguably is not something like, even if you have a party going on every other night, you typically probably don't hear crying, especially from just one person. And you seemingly just go to sleep and you just ignore it. Now, if we're to believe that there's all this blood, there's so much blood that's coming out of this house that it's pouring out the sides of it, there's also that aspect too. I don't know. I feel like there's just too many parts of this story that just don't really add up to me, especially when you get up the next morning and you have someone else call on your behalf 911. This is what I hit on in my videos, is I feel like at some point you have to have your friend's best interest in mind. And so why would you call your friends over in order to call the police when you literally think that something is so wrong at this point that you didn't think before?
How many of you have actually ever been in a party environment such as that? How many of you have actually done drugs, drank, God knows what, and actually partied, or maybe been hungover, or maybe been coming down off drugs, and really were just trying to sleep it off, but you couldn't because you were so high that the drug wouldn't let you sleep. So you're half in consciousness, half out of consciousness. So whenever you're the first thing in the morning or you wake up and you think it's morning, but it's actually noon, and you and the other roommate are texting, y'all get up, y'all go and look up the, out the through the living room, you meet up there, you see the body, or you see blood, or whatever you saw, and you start freaking out. How many of you would not go into fight or flight? How many? I mean, one of them, I would say, was probably Bethany. They're probably with the unconscious person. Dylan looked kind of strong-willed, so I would be willing to bet it was Bethany, but I could be wrong. But you know, if you wake up in that stupor, still trying to focus, and you see all this stuff, you're gonna. It's kind of like, have you ever been in a car wreck or almost gotten into a car wreck? You know that feeling where you just kind of everything slows down? That is your body kind of freezing so you don't short circuit. So that freezing part could have been that little bit of area where it's talking about frozen shock phase. And as he walked by, she went back to sleep thinking, man, that was some creepy stuff right there. Hello, Toads. We won't tell. I've tried that myself. It just wasn't my thing.
That now you've decided, okay, I need to call someone, but it's not the police, it's your friends who arguably don't have any first responder knowledge. They don't have that that capability to handle that type of situation. That's the part that is weird to me. But I do understand the psychological aspect of it, where it's kind of like you really don't know how you would respond in that moment. It just doesn't negate the fact that it's kind of weird.
Okay, great insight. Great insight. Both of you women, great insight on that. Okay, last but not least.
Well, so we know we have the fight, flight, and freeze, right? So when we're talking about trauma, when we're talking about instant trauma, and that's kind of what happened, right? This was out of the ordinary. I agree that yes, none of us know how we would respond in a situation like that, seeing the horrific scenes that she probably saw. I think it is within the normal realm that the first person you're going to call, or the first people you're going to call, are going to be people that because if you're in shock, which she was, I fully believe that she was in shock. You're going to call people, because at that point, in that instance, in those moments, a person, her state of mind is her rationale, her brain is gone, in those moments. It's done, it's done. I mean, because she's in shock, she's in complete shock. So she froze. She didn't flee the scene, and she didn't fight because there was nobody there. She froze. So with that, she's going to make a phone call. Who do I call first? She's going to call people she knows first. I mean, it's within the realm of normality, so I mean, it's not, I mean, I don't question that part about it all. Did she go into her fight or flight? Yeah, I think she just more or less froze in where she was,
Okay.
and that's kind of my take on it. I think you did a beautiful job on explaining what all that is. I mean, I don't think any of us on the panel would have gone against you, Marty. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let me give you my take on it. Y'all want to hear my take?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My take on this is based on, past experiences. So she was what, 20 years old? Dylan was 20?
Mhm.
Yes.
I think
believe she
so.
was 20. Okay.
Mhm.
So we really don't know a lot about her upbringing. Some of the
Mhm.
things that I've heard in other panels that I've been watching, just to get a little insight on that. One of the great channels that I watch is True Crime Design. I like her early videos on this case, and she's very insightful on some of the information that, if not all of the information that she put forward. She doesn't put very many videos out anymore, but in the very beginning, she was very on point with this true crime design. Well, let me get back to that. The reason I brought that up is because she was describing Dylan's childhood in one of them and how she was raised, and she came from a good family, and there wasn't a lot of trauma. There wasn't a lot of dysfunction. There wasn't a lot of abandonment. There wasn't a lot of things like that going on in her family. So you would believe, based on your interpretation of psychological events that happen, as you grow up, unless you're exposed to traumatic events that you've had to overcome, the threshold becomes less and less on your fight or flight. You um you you don't want to, you don't position yourself to run so much. You become a fighter. You become a survivalist. You become a person that is able to be calm in the heat of battle, so to speak. Okay, so that guy that's talking is basically saying that if you're raised with proper coping skills, you're not going to freeze up, or you might freeze up more than if you're raised in an environment where there's a lot of trauma, a lot of situations where you learn to be a survivalist rather than one who doesn't question, or one that has trust in your environment. Like those individuals that are constantly questioning things, and they're not doing it for the fact of, you know, trying to get answers, but they don't trust anything that's said, and they're always, trying to debunk any theory. There's a reason they do that, because they were probably raised with some kind of abandonment, mistrust, any of that stuff. So therefore, they're not going to put much stock in anything anyone says. But if you were raised on the opposite side of the coin, you're going to genuinely trust what people say, what people do. So she could have woke up, thought it was party goers, like she said. She did recognize them, but didn't honestly. How many of you would honestly think your roommates were getting murdered if you heard what she said she heard? Be honest. Would you think that there was murder going on in your house? Like if you all of a sudden hear stuff next door, people fighting or people rummaging through the house or whatever, would you think that there was murder going on? Let's get back to this long-winded guy up here. Speak. And so the psychological effect becomes more and more reactive rather than um, shut down, if that makes sense at all. So based on that, I would believe that Dylan might have froze. She would have had that not fight instinct in her unless she had experienced a lot of trauma in her life that conditioned her to go past that frozen shock phase, as they say, and into I'm going to call the police. I'm going to prepare a weapon of sort in case he comes in here. I'm going to barricade myself until I have to take him on, or this or that or the other. And the same thing with Bethany. So that's my take on that. What do y'all think? Do you agree or disagree? You can be both. And one more thing before you answer, guys. I want to give you the option to hit the dislike button if you don't like the streams, any of them. I've never said that, but I've always thought it when I'm looking back on the on the likes or the comments and stuff, because I'm commenting back. If you don't like the stream, you're more than welcome to hit the dislike button. There is a dislike button there, so you have that opportunity as well. So based on what I just said, Kay, you or Ginger? Ginger, you want to go first, or you want Kay to go first? Do you believe?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's another take to this, right? And one which I think, you described everything very beautifully. But one thing that I would add to that for everybody to ponder is, we know at what age does our brain is fully grown, meaning fully developed. We know that to be about the age of 22. What are the last things that are developing in our brains? Which part of the brain? And that's going to be the frontal lobes up here at the front, and that's where our rationale is. That's where we think, in the future, we're thinking ahead. So she was 20. So developmentally, her brain wasn't developed all the way through, right? So we're looking at it from when we give our opinions, we're giving our opinions based upon what we know, but we are all older than 22 years old, right? So our rationale and our brains have already fully developed. So when we put it into perspective and you start to think about the development, where was she in her development? Now put that into what circumstances she found herself in.
At least I listen to Nika's. I think that's her name, Nika's Nuggets or something. And Kay reminds me so much of her when she speaks. They kind of sound the same to me, anyways.
You can understand a lot of what probably happened,
Yes,
because
exactly.
we can't really, what I'm saying. I mean, it's just food for thought. But because we don't know what her upbringing was, we don't know what her childhood, what she experienced, but we do know, we can focus on what we do know. And we do know that her brain scientifically was not developed to what we would say full. Because I mean, the last organ to develop within a human is going to be the brain. And that takes till you're 22 years old. We know that. So I mean, that's just kind of my food for thought. Whenever we place young adults or in situations that are horrible, you can't expect them to react in the same way as a full adult is going to react. And what I mean by adult is, I mean someone whose brain is fully matured, is fully grown, it's reached its capacity. I mean, we can't. That's comparing apples and oranges.
Yes, thank you so much. Ginger?
I absolutely agree with Kay. I mean, she's absolutely right. We really cannot speculate even on that, because her brain truly, is not completely fully developed. We don't know the background of her childhood. We don't know, her family, the dynamic of what she grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Environmentally, we don't know that whole, these are really, really good thoughts, on this. Actually, honestly, I've never heard anybody ever really talk about this. Everybody just kind of went right to, they could not believe that she didn't call, police for 8 hours. But given the circumstances and all, it completely makes sense when you put it into that kind of perspective.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. So I have to agree with what Kay said.
Okay. Amicus, you have any follow-up, or are you good with your original statement, or?
Yeah, no, I'm good with my original.
Okay, good deal. Then let's continue on a little bit more with the video. Y'all still good, or y'all running low with time? Because my lives are usually long. So if y'all are still good, just let me know, if you're getting to a point where, you need to go or something. And I understand it totally. Okay? Any of y'all.
Gage, I got to go in about maybe about 15.
Okay. Well, just let me know. Kind of wave
Okay.
at me or something, and we'll let the chat know that you're stepping down. And we put your link of your channel, yours and Amicus channels on the chat. So hopefully people go and check out your channels and give you a sub to, you know, to have
That's
a different
awesome.
perspective, to have a different perspective. Let's see what the rest of the video has to say.
Yeah.
But,
Well,
but he went
may
for a
not
bunch of drunk
satisfy
kids
him.
at 4 in the morning.
Wouldn't
Like,
satisfy him the
He's
same
not.
way.
I will
Yeah,
say this
maybe
before you
not.
take your break. I'll say this before you take your break. I don't think he's the type of guy who would go into a school even if you gave him a gun. That he's not. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
get caught.
Yeah. It feels more like personal domination. Like he needs to be able to see the person, each person, and watch what he does. All right, and then we'll maybe take a couple calls too. So let's get right back with Jonathan Gilliam after this. Genucel has so many products that Susan and I love. Their XV moisturizer.
Okay, let's
push it up into the window to protect this pile of people that was behind me. And I thought I was sort of surprised. That's the fight. That's the fight.
I love it.
But I also remember that I've been taught by you and others that
keep going, Doctor.
That you lose your fine motor coordination in these extreme circumstances. So hitting, phone buttons and stuff is a tall order.
Yeah, but you could take you. That's exactly right. You'll be so shaken up you can't dial a phone. But if somebody confronts you, you will be able to fight with a ferocity that you didn't even know you had. And so, but if you don't think your way through it, what takes over? You get frozen. Or like people who have tried to hide. I think there was a mall in Kenya where people tried to hide and the robbers were just coming up and shooting them. They weren't even in a position to hide. They were like literally just crouched up in a corner, and that's not going to save them. We saw it in Florida. There was a guy,
that was what I did behind a curtain. It wouldn't have done me any good. If they shot the curtain,
concealment.
12 of us would have died.
That's concealment.
But yeah, we got that part right.
It was okay, or something like that, where he got himself in a situation where he had to do this to get out of it. He was like, he had his laser beams on.
Let's ask if that happens.
Sorry.
Is that a
Who was that?
It's Jonathan Gilliam. Let's get him to respond because he studies these people. Is there a stalking version of this? Just sort of fighting their way out of being caught, or that doesn't fit for me quite right.
Well, here's what you have to realize: that the people who do mass shootings tend to be people who have a dominant. They have a dominance desire. They want to dominate people. Perhaps there are people who are smaller, or were in the case of incels, that's involuntary celibate. You're seeing that's another online thing that's growing for some strange reason. And so a lot of these people, their desire is to be seen as dominant, right? Not necessarily to kill, but their desire becomes so overwhelming that they go out and will perform something like shooting up a school or a parade, or it doesn't have to be a shooting. They go in and do a knife attack, but kill or injure 20 people in a room. So they have a desire to be dominant and to be seen as dominant. Now, you take a guy like this, he has a very similar desire, but it's not based on necessarily on the fact that he couldn't get a date or the fact that he is a smaller or has been bullied by his coworkers. This guy has developed a desire that can only be satiated through the hunt, and he doesn't want to get caught. He wants to be able to fulfill that and then continue to fulfill that. Whereas one group of people, their whole blaze of glory is the end all of their satiation. This guy, to continue to do these things methodically, that's where the stalking comes in, because stalking can for a while be all he needs to be satiated.
Okay, we're going to stop it right there, and I have some questions for the guests because I'd like to hear each and every one of your thoughts on this. I have like 4 questions for each and every one of you. And I know that, first and foremost, I want to say that I know that in the court hearing, the stalking was debunked. If you believe differently, be sure to say, what you believe on that. But I want to ask you guys, do you believe he was an incel, or the individual that did this? Because we took Brian out of the equation, okay? So the individual that did this, could he have possibly been an incel based on your definition of what an incel is? We'll start with Kay this time, and then we'll go to Amicus and then to Ginger.
Okay. Say it again.
Okay, we're taking Brian out of the equation based on the information that we know about these killings. Could this person, in your mind, possibly been an incel?
I don't know. I don't define for me what that means. What you think it means?
Okay, incel celibate is a new it's a fairly new phenomenon that was kind of created by Elliot Rodger. It's a group of men and now women with a lot of other variations in the mix. That they believe that there's only certain people that would give or would get affection, love, sex, any of their needs, and they're usually addressed as Stacy's and Chad's, which would be kind of like the upper level in their mind. They're lower than these individuals, so they develop an extreme hatred because they believe that they would never be able to match that sense of natural order, so to speak. So that's where the belief of the incel would come from.
Well, that's kind of hard to answer, right? Because if we're taking him out of the equation and we're just looking at a crime scene, like that would be a little difficult.
Well, we're looking. Well, do you believe it was a? I'm gonna get to that point, but at this point, if you were gonna put another person in there, would it be a male or a female in your eyes, or could it be both?
I'm gonna put a male in there.
Okay.
I'm gonna definitely put a male in there just because statistically, whenever we think about females, typically, but not always, they don't do crimes like this. Now, another reason why I would, well, for that reason, but it's hard for me to think about it because I know a little bit about him. I know that in his senior year, they're saying that in his senior year of high school, right, that was the year where he became the bully instead of being bullied, right? And there was some drug addiction in his senior year.
So what do y'all think about the incel theory? I know that a lot of people don't hold credence to that. And the only reason that I was asking on this live is because of the incel desire to have that which you cannot possess, and it becoming to the point where if you can't have it, it's driving you so mad in your mind that you must destroy it.
Year, we know that that was going on, but so I'm more or less leaning on the fact that of the term, like kind of having aggressive fantasies over what started off as an aggressive fantasy, probably for him, my opinion, venture to say, and then over time that became a motive for behavior. So I don't know. I mean,
okay.
I
guess you want to go.
Well, if we're just to get back to like the main point of it, and like incel. So incel stands for involuntarily celibate. So it's not necessarily like a group of people that have like necessarily like, I don't know, made like a group of themselves. It's people who cannot have sex, and that it's not that they don't choose to, it's that they can't. And so it's become this big thing of anger towards women, and this is seen through the Santa Barbara murders, that happened back in what was it, 2015. It was a start of like Papa Rogers and shit like that.
What was Elliot Rogers? Elliot Rogers?
Elliot Rogers. There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like trying to remember what his name was. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the first things one of like Reddit or whatever, 4chan, I'm sorry, whatever it was that kind of started that whole movement. And so when I look at Brian Koberger and kind of fitting into that incel theory, he was a very popular guy when it came to women. And I feel like something that kind of solidifies that for me is Howard Blum or Bloom, whatever the fuck. He very openly hates Brian Koberger. I mean, not hates him. That's a little bit presumptuous, but he very openly does not support Brian Koberger. And he still says within his book that Brian Koberger was receiving a lot of female attention and stuff like that. And so even from a accuser's perspective, Brian Koberger did not have trouble with women, like by any means. Even so much to say as the fact that like he had a prior girlfriend who eventually.
Yeah, she said he was very popular. I don't know where she got that from, but I've never heard that before. Heather, you believe he was popular? I mean, I'm not trying to argue with the person who's not here to defend themselves, but I've never heard that he was popular. I've always heard the contrary.
Died because of her addictions and stuff like that. So I just don't really buy into this incel theory. As far as like incel theory goes by like definition, right? Like he was clearly getting women. So I don't think, long story short, I don't think that he's an incel.
Okay. Ginger?
Yeah, I don't really buy into that theory either because I don't think taking Koberger out of, the mix in this and with this crime, no, I don't think incel actually fits. That's just.
And the only reason that I said take him out of the equation is to give the individuals who believe he's innocent that theory. You get what I'm saying? So by taking him out of the equation would give them the opportunity to see another side of it. Like if it's not him, then who is it? What type of individual? Because at a particular point, whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent, there's still a killer out there. If you believe that he's innocent, well, what type of individual could have done this? If you're going to go along the lines of wanting to believe that deeply, then surely you have thought further down the line, okay, well, if it's not him, somebody did it. They're deceased. Somebody murdered them. So if it wasn't him in your mind, then who?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is the question. Like, what kind of person does this? Terrible massacre atrocity. Like this is, you and like you said earlier, you and I aren't out doing anything like this. And, so absolutely. Yes. Does the incel theory actually fit? It could.
Let me answer your question, Heather, not being argumentative. I like your thought. I really do. She says, would an incel be asked to go install cameras in a chick's place after it's broke into? And I answered, a gay friend, or he could have been in the friend zone. I mean, we don't know that he was like involved with her We really don't. But if she called him first to come over, wouldn't that have been a bigger deal if he was her boyfriend? She called her boyfriend. But once she found out that he could have possibly been spying on her, why did she have the reaction that she had if he was her boyfriend? She freaked out that he could have nudes of her on the camera and that he was watching her. So if he was her boyfriend, she wouldn't have freaked out about that, don't you think? But I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know. I see it more as he was probably in the friend zone. I've never really, I mean, I've kind of questioned his sexuality, but as far as the other stuff, I believe he was more in the friend zone on this one. You know, so I don't know why there's not any police reports, but what makes people lie about that? I mean, more than one person spoke on it today in the video that I showed. But we both agree to disagree, right, Heather? I like your thought pattern. Thank you for that. Keeps us sharp. Fits facts.
Yeah, it could, and I wondered too if there was any essay involved, with the girls. So,
and that's one of the main points that people hopped on very early on, that the fact that we've been told that there was no essay. So if there was no essay, that would mean that a guy who wasn't very comfortable with that or had never gotten that would have just been so angry at a female that he killed him because of the anger of not being able to get that.
Yeah.
I mean, just even saying that out loud it doesn't register in my mind, but saying that out loud, just, y'all get what I mean, right?
Could I add something here?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is just because this is something that's kind of eating away at me for like a very long time. But you don't need to have an answer. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone is like, and this is something I've dealt with because I have been quote unquote a pro burger for so long. I'm not a pro burger. I'm actually a very unbiased person. I feel like that's pretty apparent with my channel. But something that I've dealt with ever since this case started, so 19, 20 months ago, like I have I've tried to explain to people that you don't always have to have an answer, especially because from very early on, even though it took 6-7 weeks to find Brian Koberger,
I kind of do. It's my show and I'm hosting it, so it would be very awkward if it went silent, Amicus. Give me a break.
we have been questioning who this person is, who this possibly could be, and then when they found that person and they set their their eyes on this person, that's all we've been told. I think for the first 2 months, I truly believed that it was Brian Koberger. I was like, how could it not be? This is what prosecution, this is what law enforcement, whoever has been telling me. But when you don't see the details of this case and you don't see all the things that go on behind the scenes, it's hard to form any conclusions that are not the thing that has been given to you. So I don't know. I feel like when people are like, oh, we have to form this theory about why Brian Koberger did it and why this happened. I mean, look at Ted Bundy, for example, right? The only thing that
I get you totally. But at the same time, those that want the innocence card to be shown, at the same time, they need to show their understanding of the other side of the coin. Otherwise, what are we going to talk about? I mean, that's part of the reason that people are giving their opinion, because it feeds one narrative or the other. And most of the time, without dialogue, there's total silence.
That really tied his cases together was that he liked women. I mean, so in my opinion, it's just so funny to me when people are like, well, we have to form this incel theory, and we have to form this theory about why this person would target this house. Was it drugs? I'm not saying that it wasn't drugs. Let me just rephrase there. I'm not saying that that's not the case. I think that we're doing a very good job as YouTubers in trying to figure it out, because I think we live in an age where we have all of this stuff accessible to us. But I think it just comes down to, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm making my point here clear, because I feel like I'm kind of going on a tangent. But, like, we don't really have to have a reason other than the things that we see on the internet. Like, there are things that are far less incriminating in past cases than the things that we've seen in this case. That's
Okay.
Well, I think that we know of, right? I mean, I think that from what we know of, I mean, because this town that this happened in is a very, and in the area that it happened in, you know, there's going to be a lot of camera footage, you know, I mean, and we already have seen some, I mean, but I really feel like there's going to probably be more coming. And that's kind of like where I was going back with, to that, you know, environmental ignorance that he had, you know, when doing this, you know, monstrosity, is that, you know, he didn't count on the fact that there was going to be as much surveillance, because from where he was from, it's a very small town. You know, the university, I believe he went to DeSales University in Pennsylvania, which is a very small university in comparison to the University of Idaho. So whenever we have big universities, one of the, I mean, you know, whenever you're living by a university near a big university, everybody has a lot of surveillance cameras around to protect their homes and things like that. I don't think he counted on that fact. You know, that's how we know he did do some stalking. He did go, you know, because we see him on different surveillance cameras. So it wouldn't surprise me any that at the time of the trial, we even learn more about that. Now, and then also, you know, the data phone, you know, I mean, he turned on his phone when he probably shouldn't have, you know, and they got him, you know, in the area. So, I mean, so I just think, you know, there's just going to be, you know, at this point, you know, where everybody's speculating, we're a part of that. But, you know, I just think there's going to be even more surveillance that's going to tie him to it. And, of course, you know, the cell phone data that's going to particularly, you know, tie him to it. And I think, you know, as humans, right, we always do want to know why, because we're humans. We want to know, why did these things happen, in order for us to try to, you know, prevent them in the future, or try to see how could we have, you know, steered the course. Like, where did this particular human, where in the development did this human go wrong? What happened that could have potentially have given a positive outcome, you know, versus the outcome that we have and the losses that we have, you know. So I think it's always important that even after the fact, right, everybody's going to write books and movies and all that, you know, once the trial is done, because that's when we're going to know a lot of our questions will be answered. And, you know, everybody's going to be writing books and movies and all of that, because as humans, we want to try to understand this, to hopefully try, you know, to prevent it from, you know, from happening, you know, because it does take a special kind of someone to could do this kind of monstrosity. You know, I mean, he didn't have any connections to the people that we know of. You know, he didn't know them. The stalking had to have happened somewhere at some time, you know, and you know, and that's just kind of, you know, my give and take on it. I think it's good for us to talk about and try to see, like, you know, what happened. I think for me and my background and my educational background, I want to know more about his development, you know, because I think there's a lot of clues and a lot of things that are going to be telltale coming out of, you know, the development. But you know, we won't know that until he himself starts talking, or until the trial, and we get a sense of, you know, as people start coming up, knowing him and his past.
Exactly. I appreciate all y'all's thoughts and insights. And I do want to say this to my channel defense. Not that you're attacking me or anything like that. I didn't take it at that at all. And in the chat, I've also stated that, you know, sometimes whenever you type some stuff out, it could look very rude and sometimes it's misinterpreted. So if things happen, you know, people are human, things of that nature. So please don't take it personal if you're timed out or something of that nature. I don't like that to happen, but we have a very calm chat in here and we try to just all, we don't need to agree, but we disagree to agree. You know what I mean? And everybody's opinions are valid. So that's all I want to say about that. But as far as my channel is concerned, I try to dig deeper than the surface, and I don't like to. I'm getting to the point, honestly, where I'm tired of talking about this case because I'm just kind of just emptying out my emails with the shows that I've held on to for a long time, and that's why it kind of seems like they're older and the footage is older and things of that nature because I've held on to them for so long. I'm just trying to empty out my emails so that I can move on with different directions, as you've seen in my channel. If you've ever gone there and looked at the library, I talk about a lot of different cases. You know, both. I talk about addictions. I talk about homelessness. I'm going to talk about homeless vets, just to bring awareness to these situations that are going on in our daily lives that people don't talk about. Am I an expert on everything? No. Am I? But I try to do research before I present something, you know. So it's never just speculatory. It's based on, you know, life experiences and obviously education and input from other people. So I just wanted to give you guys a little understanding about the channel. I don't want to. I don't want the channel or the chat to come across as being one dimensional because we do try to incorporate different variations on different things. And I don't know about you guys, but I am getting kind of tired of this case. What do y'all think? I mean, I'm ready for the trial. Are y'all ready for the trial?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
If there is a trial.
If there is a trial, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, and that's not scheduled. It's potentially not scheduled from what I've heard the other day till June of 2025. And the reason why they're waiting till about June is because that's when all of the schools will be let out. And, you know, because we don't know how this is going to affect, you know, university students and things of that nature. So, I mean, waiting another year for this trial is going to be, I mean, yeah, it's going to be crazy. I know I can't talk about this trial for another year.
right.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna,
Absolutely.
I'm not
I
gonna talk
agree.
I'm not gonna talk about this for another year. I promise you. I'm getting to the end of my life with it, and you're probably not going to hear my input on IDAHO4 for a long time because there's a lot of new creators that are starting from the beginning. And when you go back and you listen to them, you're like, okay, it's a fresh approach, but yet you know what you know as far as your own research that you've been doing, and it kind of intertwines with everything, and it makes you feel crazy after a while.
Mm-hmm. It's very time consuming and energy consuming. And it can,
Yeah.
and you know, like bring you down too, like in my, you know what I mean? Like like it's just too much. Like we're just going around in circles, I feel sometimes too. We're not
Mm-hmm.
really, we have to see some kind of light in this. You know, there has to be joy that comes out of this case.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I try to be, I'm a really positive person, you know, so I totally understand what you're saying completely because it's like it gets sickening after a while. Not that, you know, we want justice, of course, you know, true justice for the, you know, we want the right person to, you know, to be sitting in a jail cell and, you know, we want to know what happened and, you know, like, you know, we just, you know, what is it all for? You know, we just, there has, like I said, there has to be some kind of joy that comes out of this.
Right.
There's a lot of negativity and a lot of, you know,
Amicus, I meant to ask you earlier, can you give us a little bit more insight on your channel? Like, what do you cover? And I know you said you were viewed as a pro burger. Well, you know, many people came in here and they've labeled me as well. They used to call me a guilter, you know, so I don't even know what either one of those really means, and I don't care to know because I don't really answer the labels, you know. But can you give us an insight a little bit more on your channel? Because I offered that opportunity to Ginger, and then you came up on panel. We were mid discussion, so I didn't give you the opportunity to do that.
So I am very unbiased. I'm very unbiased. If anyone watches my channel, I say that I can go either way, and the thoughts that I give, I mean, there's even some theories that I give where I say, you know, Brian Koberger could have done this with someone else. I just don't believe that he did this by himself. Like, but that doesn't mean that I'm negating the fact that it could be him with someone else. But the thing is that a lot of my opinions kind of bring into question the accusations that are against him. And that doesn't mean that I am a pro-burger. It means that I am pro-justice. I mean, look at my name, for example. My name is Amicus Curiae. Like, I am literally, like, I'm trying to say that I support the justice system. But in questioning the justice system, yeah, people have become very, very harsh towards me and have said that I am a pro-burger. And on top of that, I've been doxxed. I've actually had a couple people who have emailed me with my personal information and have tried to say that they're going to out me, which is really kind of funny because I'm like, I'm military, so go ahead and try that. I dare you. But yeah, people have like become very, very aggressive towards me. It's been kind of crazy. And so yeah, so that's kind of the consensus around my channel is I'm a pro-worker, but I don't really see how I've had that viewpoint on people. I really don't.
Okay. Yeah, people have their strong opinions and their strong beliefs, you know, and sometimes they get triggered without even realizing they're being triggered. You know, we've talked about the psychological effect, and I know that you understand it, Kay understands it, and Ginger understands it. You know, when somebody feels strongly about something, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just the approach that they might take with their belief system and the aggressiveness that comes with it. Like if you can get your point across without being aggressive or calling names or any of that, you know, there's nothing wrong with your opinion. You are you, and you know, we're all raised differently. We all have our own traumas. We all have our own setbacks. We all have our own strengths. It doesn't make us any less valid than the next person, you know. So I always like to push that belief system, you know, because I believe that I'm no better than anybody else and they're no better than me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so let me ask you guys one more question, and then I'm probably going to call it for the night because I'm still kind of ill. Not as bad as last night, but I'm still kind of ill. Do you believe that this could have been a female? And I actually got two questions, so I'll go around and y'all can answer. If it could have been a female, and if there could have been more than one person, whether it be a two-party team or more. So we'll start with Ginger, because she's about to get out of here, she said. So we'll start with you, Ginger, and then we'll go to Amicus and then Kay.
Okay. Do I believe that it could have been a woman?
Yes.
Yes, I believe that it's possible. I'm not sure if I necessarily believe, myself that, there was a female involved, but I definitely do believe that there were multiple people. Because I'm going more on the idea that this is more, like a cartel, maybe even a satanic or Aryan Brotherhood. I'm, something along those lines. That's kind of like how I feel about it. And that Koberger is just, sitting in a jail. I don't believe that he's actually sitting in a jail cell. I just believe that he's actually in witness protection. But that's just my personal opinion.
Why do people's thought patterns go there? I mean, because, not saying that she's wrong, okay? I just wonder why people's minds go there instantly, because I've heard that about Diddy lately. I've heard that Diddy is not really locked up, that's not the real Diddy, that Diddy's somewhere else. And I remember this being stated early on that Brian was in witness protection and that's not really, that he's not really locked up. Why would people believe that? I'm not trying to be confrontational, but when you hear that, in my mind, I'm like, it doesn't add up. 2 plus 2 doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't. Okay. Amicus. I'm all cool, calm, and collective. Okay. Amicus.
I apologize. Can I hit on something that was said just a little bit ago? If that's
Sure.
okay.
Sure.
So something that was said, and I just want to point it out because I feel very strongly about this, is that, something that was brought up was that the case has been too long. It's been like we've been pushing it back a lot, and I don't really feel that way. I feel like if you look at, for example, the Karen Reed trial and stuff like that. This woman was literally at the scene. She was the last person to see this person being killed, or not person being killed. I'm sorry. This person that was killed. And so something I really wanted to hit on, because I think it's very pertinent, is that this case is not short by any means, like at all.
Right.
The case has been going on for as long as it's needed to go on. And sorry, I'm kind of going through my notes here, but that was just something I wanted to.
I'm going to point out something as a therapist. As I'm listening to this, I'm going to point this out to you. And Amicus, if you're watching this, I'm not taking a shot at you or throwing shade, but you made a statement a while ago where you said one thing that annoys you is why people feel the need to have an answer to everything. But then you came back with the statement you just made. So you basically did what annoys you. So I'm trying to figure out which side you're really on. You know what I mean? Like, as a therapist, that's how I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, well, she said she doesn't like people to have an answer, but she had to have an answer for that question. So on her perspective. So yeah, I was just listening to that. But there's 12 gauge right there, and that is not me at the moment. That is me whenever this was going on.
To hit on.
Definitely needed a haircut. You're fine. You're fine. Yeah, so let me get back off camera. Good God. Okay,
You
Kay.
look good, 12 gauge. I just feel bad that you feel sick. I'm
Yeah,
sorry that you're feeling ill.
yeah, I'll get better. Kay?
I think, well, to answer your questions, you know, historically, what we know of how women kill versus how men kill, you know, I feel like, you know, there couldn't have been a woman, just in because of the knife, you know, that was used. If a woman's gonna do, you know, like you take some of the serial killers, you know, that were women, like Arlene Warno's, the Miss Warno's case. I mean, she used guns, you know, so something quick, something fast, you know. So that's that. You know, I feel like this is definitely, if looking at it, it would have been, in my mind, you know, a male. It would surprise me if the evidence led to a female. And then the other thing that you asked about, you know, could there have been, you know, more than one killer, you know, more than one person that did this? You know, no, I don't think so. Because if there would have been more, it would have been more sloppy. I mean, one person can clean up after themselves fairly well. You know, you add two people into the mix, that's going to be more things would have been left behind. It would have been even more sloppier in that sense, you know. So I mean, as because in my mind, that's just how I think. You know, if there would have been, you know, more than that, you know, and then plus, you know, for me and my rationale, you know, in my rationale, I don't feel, you know, that the cartel had anything to do with it, or all that other stuff. I don't. For me, and no, in my logical mind, no. I mean, I think that the reason why he was zoned in, why they were able to catch him, and thank God that they did, was because of all of the surveillances, of all of the cameras. You know, this was I go back to that because that's we know that they have a lot of surveillance cameras, you know, from neighbors, from people down the street. I mean, you know, everybody. And as it grows, as our country continues to grow, everybody's putting cameras up on to protect their homes, and those cameras are catching things that normally no one would be catching because there's a camera there. So I mean, we're getting to the point to where it's going to be kind of impossible for you to even take out your trash without 4 or 5 neighbors knowing at what time you took out your trash. I mean, they're going to be able to pinpoint it down to the second, you know. So I, you know, for me, I just think, you know, there's going to be a lot of evidence coming out of those surveillance cameras that and they probably have a lot a lot of that footage, you know. And then also, you know, the phone, you know, I mean, so you mean to tell me that, you know, with the phone, for the phone surveillance that we have, I mean, even in the Alex Murdoch case, we learned that they can now, with our cell phones and the things that we do with our cell phones and where we ping our cell phones, that's getting extremely accurate as to where, you know, very close to where you know, where all of that can be. So I just think, you know, there's just a lot of of evidence, digital evidence, that is gonna come up out of this. So I don't feel that, we have the wrong person in jail. I don't feel that the United States is going to be putting somebody in the Secret Service or anything like that. I mean, I doubt it. I don't. Maybe I'm too close-minded, but I just don't feel any of those theories are relevant.
Could
for
I
me.
add something to that?
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
Okay.
But so for being a female part, I do agree with you. I don't think that it was a female, and that's because the PC or like the law enforcement, they have come out and they've said that there were 3 other male DNAs that they were looking into. So I don't think that it was a female if they were to mention that part, right? And then you had mentioned at one point like people being sloppy within this 8 minutes, right? They never mentioned, and this is basic DNA science, right? This is basic forensic science, is that if someone was to act on this alone, then there should be clear DNA that shows pieces of evidence, like DNA evidence, that transfers from one body to another one. So if it was clear that one person had done this, there would be some trace of DNA, considering that this DNA was so sloppy and potentially sloppy, as you put it, that there would be at least a minuscule amount of blood that would go from one person to the next person. If
we don't know that didn't happen, we're as you're speaking, I guess you're assuming that didn't happen. So we don't know that didn't happen. Hopefully we do find out. I believe that there was transfer of blood from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And I believe that there was probably more evidence than what we've been shown, but I could be wrong. I mean, there's a lot of forensic that went into this. And I believe that the local cop probably were in over their head, so they turned it over to the FBI, and they were just pretty much clue finders, and the FBI was putting the case together. That's what I believe. I mean, I believe that's how come it got potentially done with so quickly.
If one person had done it, especially when law enforcement says this was done by one weapon and they're looking for this knife sheath. Go ahead, Cash. What do you mean, nope? But do you get what I'm saying?
I think no, I don't. No, I really don't get what you're saying. I mean, I have no idea what you just said. So what was your point?
Well, because you said this murder was sloppy, and it was done in 8 minutes. It was sloppy. Then there would be DNA that would transfer from one body to another one if it was done by one person.
Okay, no, I think you misunderstood what I said. I used the word sloppy. I never even said anything about 8 minutes. But what I meant to say was, if there was multiple people, right? Whenever there's a couple of people in doing a crime, right? If this is your first crime, that you're gonna go and you're gonna, kill someone. Sometimes you yourself are going to go into some bit of a shock because maybe you didn't, whenever it's one thing to see, killing done on TV, and it's a whole other thing to experience it in person. So that's what I meant by, like, if there would have been more than one person in the home doing this, it would have gotten sloppy, meaning, there would have been, there would have been more left behind at the scene. Whether it's DNA,
like,
whether it's
victim for victim. That's what I'm trying to get at.
You're trying to get at what?
That's what I'm trying to get at, is that there would, if it was sloppy in any sense, whether it was a fingerprint, whether it was a piece of DNA or something like that, don't you think that there would be some sloppiness in someone going from victim to victim and killing them?
I don't know, because I mean, this happened. He did this fast.
Absolutely.
He did it fast. I don't know.
Like there would have to be blood from the first victim on the second, and then second to the third, and then third to the fourth. You know?
Yeah. But okay. Yeah. But that the thing about it is that we don't have the knife, dude. We don't have
We
the
also
knife.
don't have how many people did it except for one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right about that. But I mean, unless we get a hold of the knife, are we gonna be able to see how much DNA is gonna be, on that knife? I mean, and at the same time, like, for multiple people to have come in and to do this, I'm saying what
That would be a cool song title. Where is the psycho virgin?
where I'm in confidence that it was only one person is because of all of the surveillance cameras that they have.
Yeah, but I'm talking about things that happen within the scene. I don't really respectfully.
Yeah, but I mean, right. But the thing about it is that if there was only one person going by this house multiple times and it was seen multiple times coming to that home.
Yeah, but then you're talking about the people that could have walked there.
So now all of the sudden, from out of the blue, we're gonna get people that are walking there. We're gonna get
people
walking there.
That happened within the first 2 weeks. There was conversations about people walking there. That happened within the first 2 weeks.
Yeah,
is happening.
So let me ask you guys a question. Okay, you are great at this. You are great at this. I love it. Let's stop for a commercial break. For that fresh feeling of your laundry coming out just right, you might try Gain. Now back to our broadcasting scenario. You're talking about DNA transfer. So the very first person, when they're stabbed, their DNA supposedly transfers to the second person, to the third person, to the fourth person. So whoever was stabbed last would have had 3 other person DNA in their body, even if the blood was not on them, even if they were wiped clean. If that knife went into their body, in theory, wouldn't you say that they would have had DNA from the other 3 people?
Yeah, and I mean, and that goes to say that we don't know because we haven't gotten to the trial. We don't know that there wasn't DNA.
Based on science, though, based on what you know about science.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely.
But they've released much less.
But I don't think that they're releasing everything.
They have released much less. I mean, they have released these statements saying that, go read the PCA. This will incriminate whoever you think it's about. I mean, Twizzlestick, let's look at him. He had one little comment made about him and it got brought up in court. I mean, if there was even a second, even if there was a chance of a doubt that these people had blood from, and this is not to mention everything else, but if there was even a chance that this blood did pass from victim to victim to victim, they would mention that. There would be 100% chance that they would mention that. Just to
not necessarily though, not necessarily, not right now. I think your question is gonna get answered when we go into the trial, but there is nothing to say that they have to answer those things right now. I think DNA is gonna play a big part of that, and I think that is coming. But we can't sit here because we really don't know because they haven't said they've said some things, but they haven't said everything, and they're not going to. They're not going to because then what's the point of having a trial? If everything that they have, if they put it all out right now for us to read and in the PSA and blah 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 and da da da, then what's the point of having a trial?
No,
this person's not going to ever get. Then this person's never going to get a fair trial. I mean, I'm just saying we have to chill. I think more things are coming.
That doesn't make sense though, because the PCA is specifically targeted to Brian Koberger. The PCA, and I've said this in my videos too, is that the PCA doesn't outline all the other things that they found in the case because it is specifically geared towards Brian Koberger. And so for them to not mention something that says that there was blood found on the first victim that afterwards follows in lines with the rest of the victims, that would be so irresponsible, because that would lead people to believe that there was more than one killer. Like, they would have to mention that. And considering they've already done all this forensic information, all this analysis to show that there was blood on the knife sheath, DNA on the knife sheath, and to show that there was a damn footprint in front of Dill Morrison's door, that would be so irresponsible of them to not mention that there was blood that was on the first victim that ended up on the last victim, to show that it was one person.
I understand.
I just don't think that.
I understand what you're saying, Amicus, and you're right. But at the same time, during some of the hearings, they discussed the exculpatory evidence, and if any of the stuff is found out that the prosecution withheld evidence such as that, I'm not saying I understand the concept. I understand the concept of the PCA all the way past the trial. I get it because, I'm studying it right now. But I understand it. And that doesn't make me an expert. But, I understand the process. And anyways, they wouldn't discuss that in the PCA. It would that would be evidence that would be gagged. That would be evident that.
Why would that be gagged?
Because that would be evident that they're wanting to disclose later on in the trial, not necessarily used to have probable cause to arrest them. The PCA is just a probable cause affidavit, meaning that they apply that to the least amount of evidence needed to show that this individual could have possibly committed this crime. The judge goes over the PCA, he signs off, and then there's a preliminary hearing, which we didn't have at this point. And it goes into the grand jury where they do more investigation to make sure that the probable cause matches the accusations of the crime. So they wouldn't be putting all their big cards out there like that because it's not necessary.
But they didn't know that the gag order was going to be a thing until months after. So why would
what we're trying to tell you is that at the time when this starts to happen, all that they have to do is show the minimum. They don't have to show everything that they've got, regardless of what's going to happen in the gag order, this and that, and the third following. In order to get him in there, it's the minimum. That's what we're trying to say, is that they're not going to show everything on that PCA because they don't have to. Right now, they don't. That is going to be something for the trial.
Because anytime a crime is committed, okay. See, I work with juveniles. So a juvenile commits a crime tonight. We have an affidavit that is given to us by the police to put them. We don't arrest them. We don't put them in custody. We put them in custody. We have to have probable cause to put somebody in custody. It does not mean they have to put everything that the juvenile did to be detained. I don't know if that makes sense. My head's swimming right now, so I'm trying to make as much sense as possible.
No, it does. It does. I'm just saying that, like, with the fact that there was so much misinformation, including in the PCA, considering that initially they didn't even know what vehicle they were looking for. And I'm not making that shit up. That shit happened. It said that we initially thought it was this car, and then it was wrong. You would just think that they would put so much more information into this PCA to make it stick more. And that's why people thought that, when they went to Pennsylvania, you have to have more of a reason in order to extradite someone than you would just have to arrest them in the state that they were in. So you would have to find more evidence. So they found the DNA. Why wouldn't they initially come out and say, hey, by the way, all this blood was on these other people. It seems
Right. I get your point. But to be fair as well, when it came to Ethan, they redacted a lot of that information. So that would, if he was the last victim, that would have been the place where all this stuff that we're talking about would have been placed, right?
potentially if he was the last victim.
Yes, if he was the last victim, or Xana, or whoever, there was a large portion redacted. So we don't know what went in that part. They could have, I mean, not law enforcement, but the court could have seen that portion that was redacted to the public. Maybe it was so gruesome that they didn't want to put that out into the public.
You're
They
right.
didn't want
I
the family-
honestly, I'm going to be honest here. I completely forgot about the fact that there was a lot of redacted statements for that. That's my bad.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's that responsibility to the families because they're already going to have to hear about it. They're going to have to see it in a trial. You wouldn't want the families to have to read all that at the very beginning. You know, they are already having to go with the death of their loved ones and all that. I mean, I would believe that it's out of courtesy for the families and the public because not everybody can handle that, you know?
Yeah,
So
but
there was
also their autopsies were released. So I don't really know what benefit to them it would have given them to redact the fact that it said blood was on each part of them.
right.
I'm not saying that it wasn't. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that because I have, like I just said, I owned up to forgetting about the redacted parts, but I don't really understand why they would need to redact those parts.
They're going to have to redact those things. I mean, it is that way, and it has been that way because at the same time, all of those details can't come out because then the defendant wouldn't be able to have a fair trial. I mean, already everybody knows a lot about this case. I mean, this person has to have a fair trial. They've got to find somewhere to have a fair trial, and if they gave everything up and everybody knew everything, then what is the point of being innocent until proven guilty? They're going to have to hold some of it. They're going to have to hold some of it back. I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to.
She had a question for you. What did you say, Amicus?
I said, in what other situation has any other case done that though? Like genuinely, like when they truly believe that someone is guilty, when have they ever said, we're not going to say that, this person didn't do this, this, and this?
Amicus, why would people be arrested if they haven't been probable to commit a crime? They don't arrest everybody that's a suspect. They interview people, and once a suspect has more variation of possibly committing the crime with evidence backing that up. It doesn't need to be extensive. It doesn't need to show every little bit of evidence that they have because the investigation is still going on at the time of the PCA. So therefore, they don't have all the evidence, but they have enough to put this person in custody to arrest them. And then it goes on from there, the court process. All these questions you're asking are questions that are good questions, but most of them are not relevant in the court of law.
Because of a potential gag order or a potential mistrial or something like that.
Okay, well, let me explain the PCA to you. Okay, the PCA is written by the arresting officer. So whatever the arresting officer gets out of the evidence that they collect, whether it be their own personal interpretation of the evidence that they gather, or whether it be other forms of forensics, labs, all of this stuff. Okay, when you look at other PCAs that are public, that are being publicized with high profile cases, You don't hear about the lab results. You don't hear about any of that. You hear about the most basic because you're just trying to get an arrest warrant. That's all you're trying to do with the PCA. That's it. It has nothing to do with the trial at that point, okay? You're just getting an arrest warrant. You're just wanting the judge to say, okay, I've read your evidence that you have against this person. In my belief, by what I've experienced by law and everything that I've been exposed to in training and everything else, I believe that there's enough to arrest them. So that's when the and you're right, Janelle. I mean, whether your theory is correct or whether whatever I'm saying is correct, I mean, we both are pretty much seeing the same thing. You know, the man is still arrested, right? So whether they got it wrong, it will be proven. He will be set free. If they got it right, you know, it goes the way it's gonna go. But the interesting part is we can still talk about it and neither one of us has to be right. I I enjoy that, you know? The search warrants
Yeah.
start being filed. That's when they start being applicated. So there's a process in all this. It's not all thrown together. And I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. Amicus, are you there?
Yes, sorry.
You're fine.
No, I mean I get it. Like I understand that there's like pertinent cases or pertinent facts to the case. Like I've pointed that out in my videos that like the PCA in general is specifically tailored to his case. But
Yeah.
when you get to this point in this case where you have so many questions, you just have to wonder, like everyone is wondering. I mean, all of YouTube, all of people around this case are wondering how did people get to this point? How did people even, ascertain like this whole thing, right? But
Right.
and that's my whole point with it is that if you did, and I'm not saying that it's not possible that people withheld these facts because it didn't matter to them at the time, but when you look at it from hindsight, you just have to wonder, why weren't things that seem to have built the case up even more to reject this opinion of a potential mistrial? Why weren't they put in there? Like that's my point. Is like we see how much question has been brought about this case. So the basis of it is where are these like misinformation? Like where's this misinformation coming from, or this lack of facts coming from? And so when you hear this other,
Let me ask you guys a question. I've heard enough of this. I know how it ends. I gave you the gist of it. I want to talk a little bit. Let me ask you a question. As far as the other, she was talking, or you guys are talking about the misinformation of the media. Do you believe that um, there's misinformation as far as YouTubers are concerned as well? Do you believe it's just one-sided? I don't like that because that one's better. Do you believe that it's one-sided? That the mainstream media is the only one that presents misinformation? Do you believe that all the YouTubers have the correct information? Do you believe that any of them present any misinformation at all? I mean, I'm just asking. I'm not trying to be argumentative or anything like that. Don't take it as any way other than just a question. Because to be fair, in any kind of discussion, we have to look at both sides, right? But they are an authority. We have a responsibility as people in general, just to be as thorough as we can when we're presenting something, especially if many people are looking up to us as a logical, rational voice of reason. We do have that responsibility. I mean, right now, you guys are watching me and you're the public. So it's my responsibility not to be lying to you, you know? There it is my responsibility to myself to be as honest with you guys as I perceive my image as a YouTube creator or whatever you want to call me, to present the most honest facts or information that I possibly can as I see it. So, that's why I was asking. That's why I was asking because, I hear that a lot. And it's almost like people believe that the mainstream media is just pushing one narrative, but look at the YouTubers as well. It's almost like a competition. Mainstream media said this, so I'm going to push this. And there's nothing wrong with that. People do as they will. But I hope that you understand that given a platform such as YouTube, we do have a responsibility. You know, some of us that are monetized, we do have that responsibility. We're getting paid to push a channel and to be responsible with what we say. It's not okay to create, as Heather said, hoaxes and to cyber stalk and bully and all that other stuff. It's not okay. You know, it's not okay. Um, I put myself in that padded cell. Thank you for being here, Texas. Hey, Allie, how are you doing? Um, yeah, exactly. I agree with you guys. I mean, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just, this is a logical thought process, because we do hear that a lot. We do hear that, people are lying. People are pushing their narrative. They're pushing their narrative. They're pushing their narrative. Well, what narrative is that? If you believe that the individual is innocent until proven guilty, but yet you're trying to convict other people in your narratives, that means that you believe that the individual is totally innocent. Not until the trial comes. You're pushing other narrative to deflect the fact that this individual could have anything to do with it. So if that's being stated, there's not an objective voice there. There is obviously a biased opinion. That's all I'm trying to say. Like what that panel was just talking about right there. One person was asking these questions, another person was trying to clarify it, but the person that was listening to the other person had her bias for whatever reason, and she wasn't listening to what the other person was saying. She didn't listen to what I was explaining. She still had her questions. So that means that she really wasn't listening to be hearing. She was listening until she heard something that aligned with her belief system. And that's what we do as human beings. We sometimes don't listen to be clear, to maybe see another side of it. Sometimes we listen until the certain person says something that we believe in, and then they're credible in our eyes. They are the factual person, while everybody else is just a guilter or just a pro burger or this or that and the other. I give you an example. One time I was listening to a presenter, and he was talking about being in treatment. Okay, he was in a drug treatment, And he said, I was wondering how come I never got it right. And how come I couldn't stay sober? How come I always relapsed? And he said, I finally realized that when other people were talking about alcohol, I wasn't paying attention. When they were talking about criminal activity, I wasn't paying attention because those two things I didn't do. When they were talking about prescription pills, I wasn't paying attention because I didn't do that. I didn't have a problem with that. And then somebody mentioned cocaine. Then all of a sudden my ears stood up and I started paying attention because that's what I did. That's what I abused. He said, but later on, I realized the only thing I was listening to was what I already knew. And I closed my mind off to other people's perspectives because addiction is universal, meaning that had I listened to the alcoholic, had I listened to the pill popper, had I listened to the other person, I could have learned from them instead of just listening to what I already knew and what made sense to me because I was fearful of change. I was fearful of doing something different. And I hope that makes sense to you guys because that's pretty much the mentality of a lot of individuals. If you're listening to hear the frats did it, well, your ears open up. If you're listening to hear that he was an incel, your ears open up. If you were listening to the cartels did it or it was a drug hit, your ears open up. But if anybody has any kind of variations of other avenues, you say you're open to other theories, but in reality, people are not. As human beings, we click off. We want to be accepted, not rejected. So a lot of times in these chats, whenever you go to a chat room, you instantly know if you're going to be accepted or rejected because people either accept you or they throw you out or they block you. And that's sad because to be able to say that we're all wanting justice is really not the truth in some cases. Some cases, it's not about justice. It's about hearing your own voice in the multitude of people that are giving you praise for what they believe is accurate. For some people and monetary value, that is their glory. It is not about justice. Because how can you be pushing a narrative when the police have found a person that they believe has probable cause to be incarcerated at this moment? A person who waived a speedy trial, a person whose attorney continues to ask for time and time and time. So if he was innocent, I would like to believe that this individual, as he stated in Pennsylvania, would be eager to exonerate himself. And that means that he would be doing this in the fastest way possible to show the world that he wasn't a killer, that he is through and through innocent. But he still has the right to waive it or not. I mean, he has the right in his defense to waive that or not. Nobody is forcing him to call his shots like his defense attorney is doing. He has rights. He has the ability to say, no, that's not what I want. He was asked to plead. He didn't say a word. The judge had to say not guilty. You know what I'm saying? He could have said, I'm not guilty 100%, Your Honor. What kept him from doing that? What I'm trying to say is you missed the whole point. The whole point is if we look outside the box, sometimes we might be not agreeing with it, but at least we're open minded. We're not just asking questions or we're filling in the blanks ourselves with what makes sense to us, but we're giving us a chance to look and grow rather than stay stagnant in one direction. Because if you can't grow in life, then you're just stagnant. And most of the time, that's why a lot of things happen in families that are very destructive. You have husbands killing wives, you have mothers killing children, you have family members killing elderly family members, you have all these things going on. But it always seemed that if we can make an excuse to justify the behavior, then there should be no consequence. And that's what it seems like today's America, that nobody wants to face consequences. Because without consequence, without rules, without laws, there would be anarchy and chaos. You know? Want to pet your cat. You don't have a cat, you have a pit bull. Like I said, we agree to disagree, and I'm not saying that anybody's wrong in the chat. You're free to put what you believe. I'm just asking you to, maybe look outside the box. I've been saying that since day one. Because even though I sound one-dimensional, I'm very objective. I just see a side of this that you guys don't really understand because I can't explain it to you. I've been dealing with this for a long time in different variations. And do innocent people go to jail? Yes, they do. Do innocent people get convicted? Yes, they do. And you know what? If I shared a part of my life that really hurt me for a lot of years, you might actually understand my point in all this. As much as I love these people, I still had to stand by and watch them get taken from me. And even though they're back, it took a lot of my life and a lot of things that I had to do on my own in order to grow, not only through my own addiction, but to put myself through school, to keep myself alive and functioning. And to say that everybody who struggles in life turns out to be a murderer or a rapist or a killer or a thief or a robber or addicted to drugs forever is false. Some people turn out to be successful. And really, that's all I got to say about that. I've taken enough of your time. I hope that you respectfully take my thoughts as just my thoughts. I ask you a question. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? If you can't dig it, get you a bigger shovel. And this is the present 12 gauge. Maestro, cue that music.